and welcome to another one of EMG's panel discussions inspired by South by Southwest. I'm Isabel Barreto, along here with Damian Navarro, Elliot Darvik, Meredith Bunch, and Amanda Vanderberg. Today we're going to be talking about fear and the art of creation, which was a panel that I attended at South by Southwest by Jonathan Fields and Chris Guyabo. I think that's how you say his last name. This was a pretty popular topic that came up at South by Southwest, and I overheard a lot of people talking about it. One of the main introductions to this was how fear obviously is a human condition. Like, even just talking in front of a camera right now, I'm like, you know? It's something that we all feel, and it's something that comes up in business all the time. It comes up in creative business, which we're in, marketing and advertising. And it's something that I think is, we don't talk about that much. And I think it's important to address it rather than just kind of pretend it never happened. So a couple of the things that were brought up in this panel were how fear can stop someone from starting a project, finishing a project, in the creative process. Maybe someone won't explore an area because they're afraid that it won't be accepted, or they're afraid that it won't be the right thing, or whatever it is. So I kind of just wanted to talk to you guys today about what are some examples that you've encountered in doing business, whether it's dealing with clients, dealing with prospective clients, current clients, in your own personal experience that you've felt fear or encountered fear, and how you've overcome it. Whether it's fear that a client won't pay a certain amount of money, or fear that a project won't go to the heights that it could go to because of whatever reason. So if anyone wants to start.
I can take the first one.
Okay.
I think it's funny because typically in our field, where it's at the front lines, where you're developing these relationships with clients, you hear a lot of, well, we already do that. And for me, that's always a good sign of, I'm just really scared that we're going to have to do something different, or we've always done it this way. And so I think the fear of change, of trying something different, especially when you're working in more traditional and conservative industries like we do, can have a lot of people scared. And so I think it's really important to map anything that you're doing new back to something that is very familiar to them, really making it relationship oriented, that you're walking through with hand, holding their hands, and small baby steps is the best way. But also trying to leverage other individuals that have taken that step and have been successful, but also not being, but also not denying the fact that absolutely there is potential for failure. And I think also when you talk about the failure, it makes it a little less scary. When you really start to understand where the failure may lie and what is relevant to that individual, it's kind of like unveiling that there's no monster in the closet, right? We're on the same page, there's not a lot to be scared of. Really, it might just be one thing. So trying to kind of deductively reason what truly is creating the fear is probably our first big step.
The best anecdote to fear is, for me, the question, like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
Like, if you face that and it's really not as bad as you think it is, then okay, let's go for it. And just lowering the stakes, and their personal stake in it too. I mean, and luckily, or thankfully, the work we do is backed by data consistently, and so we're always going to know and have checkpoints where we're going to know something's working, and we're going to head off failure before it happens. So I think we're in a really good position to make it more comfortable for our clients, which is intentional, but it's also something to bring up during that time too.
I think your point of bringing about data, we produce a lot of data, and we're always giving feedback to clients in the form of data. A lot of what we do in the strategy and media group is we're, take social intelligence, for instance, we're looking at a lot of feedback that's being given to clients. There's a bit of fear that they're not going to like what they hear.
Yeah.
And so that's a different type of fear. And how do you kind of mitigate that fear on the client's end? you don't want to change, what's being said, right? They're paying you to tell them what's being said, right? Because you don't want to hide the truth to mitigate their fear, but what I found the best thing you can do is give them context.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, what seems really bad in a context, all of a sudden, wow, when you give me a little more to look at, it doesn't actually look so bad, or there's not as much to fear there. So I think, using context to mitigate fear, giving analytical feedback is really helpful.
But you also have to be honest, because to your point, some of our clients are really looking for the truth, even if it's bad, particularly our entertainment clients who are coming out with the movie. If we're hearing online that everything that people are saying is really negative, then we of course want to do our best to sort of couch that and present it in a nice way. But, that's the data and that's what they're looking for. And I think, in working a lot with Elliot's group, I think there's a lot of fear, and in client services, trying to put together proposals and to think outside of the box, but also remaining true to our roots, which is, really data-backed sort of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it a little bit harder sometimes when we want to put ourselves outside the box and think a little bit more creatively.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it sometimes harder to track and have exact data points of, how is our work working, who is it reaching, etc. So I think there's definitely that fear of presenting really out there ideas that are different than what we've done, but trying to figure out a way to still always tie it back to data.
That's a great point. One of the things that you mentioned, Damien, was the embracing failure, and that's something that was definitely brought up, and it's also something that I just am getting more and more familiar with. I just read a book by Seth Godin, Poke the Box. Read that book, it's fantastic. But one thing that he talks about in there, and what was mentioned also in the panel, was that fear comes from thinking of failure. Fear comes from thinking that something that you're about to embark on is not going to happen or is going to fail in some way in the long term. So if you just embrace failure as part of success, and it's just trying something new, whether it's a new relationship with a client or a new project or whatever it is, then that's something that kind of removes that monster that you were talking about.
And there's such a fine line between success and failure.
Sure.
Oftentimes it's just a tiny little flip, and it's wildly successful, or it's
Exactly.
a disaster.
Well, I think also being naturally entrepreneurial, you have to get to a point where if you want to be successful, I use this word or this phrase a lot, but I'm always prepared for small bad things to happen.
Sure.
And you have to be able to accommodate within your strategy those small bad things happening.
Absolutely.
So actually planning for failure, I think is a new paradigm shift, right? Where it used to be like, no, I have to plan to remove failure from the plan, right? And instead, that's just not logical.
Right.
And especially in today's age where things are changing so dramatically, so quickly, to try and eliminate failure altogether. It's just like, what am I prepared to go wrong, and then what are the things that absolutely cannot go wrong? So creating those pillars of your plan that absolutely cannot be compromised is a really important step.
And working with clients that want, trust us enough to take risks and are okay with us failing a bit doesn't mean we have to fail huge, right?
Right.
But my favorite clients are the ones that let us take small bets.
Yep.
Let's create a test budget to try this new thing out, and if it doesn't work, if it fails, that's okay. At least we learned something from it. But we can remove that fear by saying, the stakes are fairly low.
Absolutely. A couple of things that they also shared was in the face of fear, the best thing to do is act. I know that a lot of times within managing my projects as a project manager, there's so many little milestones that come up, all these obstacles that just are like raised like pillars in front of you of obstacles that can really test your ability to go beyond fear. And one thing that I found, and one thing that was mentioned in this panel, was to act. The first thing, act.
To not let it debilitate you.
Exactly.
Right.
Just
Right.
do something. Doing something is better than not doing anything. So whoever you need to talk to, whatever way to get over that obstacle. What else did they say? Another point they brought was the increase your tolerance of the unknown, because a lot of times we're afraid of well, we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be a success or a failure or whatever it's going to be, but increasing our tolerance of that, I think, gives us a more a wide road to try innovative projects and innovative tasks, and
Well, I would say that an important thing to keep in mind are these three areas. Endurance is, I think, where you're saying to act. The fact that you can continue to go faster, move quicker, is something that I know that I try to instill in all of us to practice. Removing the ego is probably the second, right? That the fact that we are not our own market, our own audience, and that we have to understand that our ideas do not equal what's worn on our sleeve. And then finally, I think it's a matter of humility. The fact that when these things do come up, that we do not take it personally, but we try our best. We try to do different things, and when they go wrong, great, and when they go right, even better.
Absolutely.
I think there's also, working at an agency, there needs to be that really fine balance between humility and confidence, because we want to be obviously deferential to our clients. We want to make them happy. We want to do what they're asking us to do, but then there's also the instances where sometimes we know better, and sometimes they feel that they know better. But really trying to push them and get them to do these test budgets to show, we're going to lower the stakes, but it really is worth taking that risk, and we need to sort of hold their hands and do that, and at the same time understand that there may be small failures along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of really successful brands or successful companies, you don't really see all that it took to get there.
No.
In the meantime, if you go back through the history, they probably had millions of small little failers.
Those just don't make their way into the case studies.
Exactly. Nobody pays attention to failures. If
Unless they're huge.
Exactly. Unless it just fails overall. But I think it's all about innovation. It's all about trying new things and not being stopped by any one obstacle, including fear. And I think that's something that's great about our group here at EMG, is that we are instilling this culture of you're able to talk to the owner of the company or the VP of client services or whatever it is about really anything, any obstacle that you're having. If that person can help inspire you, then go to them.
Right.
And I think that's something that's important to continue to instill in everybody, that not only everybody that works here, but also to our client. I think it's something that if we embody as a whole, it'll really show in our work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So I think that's all I have. Is I think that's something that it's important to bring up and just talk about as a group within every organization. In the panel that I went to, there was mostly creatives and entrepreneurs, because I think that those people are the main people that experience starting projects on a constant and consistent basis. But the more I thought about it, I was like, that really impacts everybody in our organization. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel.
See you guys soon.
Thank you.